good morning, afternoon, or evening, and welcome to the Bloody Disgusting Network. The following show is just horrifying. Beware.
Sheriff, you're not cheating on your wife if you eat my lemon square.
Your lemon squares taste like ass.
Okay, so we are joined officially by Kevin Williamson. I'm very excited. We're going to dive right into this because we've got limited time and so many questions to ask you. So we're going to begin with a bit of a softball question. And I'm wondering, how aware are you of fan reactions to your work? And how much does that factor into the things that you write, if at all?
Well, I pay attention. I want feedback, and it's from anyone. A good idea is a good idea, and I think healthy criticism is not a bad thing either. I've learned a lot from some. There's a few critics out there, for instance, that I really follow, and I'm anxious to see what they say about my work, and if they do tear it apart, as long as it's like something constructive, and they're not just being mean for the sake of being mean, which is you get a lot of that too. But
yeah.
By the way, that just comes with it. But I really like constructive feedback, and in any type of form. And Twitter has just changed the game on instant feedback. But like for instance with Scream, and I think it was Scream 2 when I killed Randy. That's when I got a lot of flack. I remember everybody was like, "Why did you kill Randy? Why did you kill Randy?" I'm like, because I wanted this reaction.
But it's interesting because meanwhile, now you have people that are like, you got to kill the trio now, because if you don't, then it doesn't mean anything. And it's like, well, where was that when Randy died?
But also don't kill any of the central trio because we can't afford to lose any of them. We love them all.
Exactly. So there's all of that going on. And I learned about Twitter with Vampire Diaries, because that's when I think the CW used the internet to launch Vampire Diaries. It was all like, let's watch shows with us. And so we would tweet along, and it was all part of the advertisement. And we would learn instantly the next day when they didn't like something, or when they did like something. Or that's when I learned, that's when everyone started to ship different characters and different relationships. And that's when all that began. And I was like, oh, wow. And if I did something wrong, boy, they let me know it.
Right.
Well, so I guess going into the internet, then that's a good segue into our next question. So we're kind of going through some of the films in the franchise, and we'll just start with Scream 2, actually, because that notoriously had issues with the internet back in 97 when that was being filmed. And, the infamous script leaks prompted a dramatic overhaul of your original treatment, at least to our knowledge, including the reported loss maybe of a third and fourth killer in Hallie and Derek. When all that was going on, how did you approach the rewrite or rewrites? And do you miss anything from that original treatment that didn't make it into the final film?
No, I don't remember anything about what you just said. I can only speak to my memory, and it's a very unreliable narrator at this point. But I don't recall ever changing anything because of the internet. When we were auditioning people for Scream 2, we only gave them the first 70 pages to read. They were all had a big mark through them, and they were all secretly coded. We would make actors come into the conference room and we get there and not leave with it and things like that. So yes, we did. We actually leaked some fake endings because we knew there was one where we made Dewey the ending. We made Dewey the killer, in the end, which was just preposterous, but we did it. We made him the killer. We made him rise up after getting shot and kill everyone and be part of it. And we connect. And my assistant wrote that version, and we put it on the internet. And we would sit around at lunch and come up with fake endings. And then we would decide which one we wanted to sort of put out there, because we were worried that the real ending would get out there.
Right.
And we wanted to make sure that if it did, no one knew which was which. So we actually leaked, and I had a friend of mine that ran a blog, and I sent it to, or not a friend, but someone who I'd been in touch with, who had interviewed me for several things, and I had met him and I trusted him, and I sent it to him and said, "Will you please leak this?" And he did. And
I love that.
Scream 2.
Yeah.
It was lovely. And anyway, so yeah, we did play that game a little bit. We felt like we had to, because there was such such a fervor over the Scream 2, which was, by the way, a great thing, great place to be, that you can do all of this.
Yes.
It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so we're going to move on to Scream 3 now.
Just go straight past, skip the 1 and 2 and go right into Scream 3.
Well,
I see where this is going.
There's so much dirt.
Yeah, there's a bit more contentious stuff to maybe try to get out of you. So we know the original idea for Scream 3 was to return to Woodsboro, and we do see that segment in the final film. And we also know that that treatment ends up becoming the entirety of the premise in Scream 4, where Sidney finally comes back home and so on. We were wondering if there are other unused aspects of Scream 3 that you ended up sort of putting into Scream 4.
I wish Wes was here because I could ask him. I started thinking about that, about why they moved it from Woodsboro to LA. And I think part of it was Courtney's schedule and schedule. And I can't remember if Nev was still doing Party of Five or not too, but I think we were butting into some TV schedules, and all of those shows were first position. We had second position behind everything because there were longstanding contracts. And so I think that had something to do with the fact that he got moved to LA. And I think Wes wanted to be in LA. He didn't see a point to going back to Woodsboro. And so I think that's what in my 30-page outline, I think, or 35, whatever it was, I went and looked for that outline the other day. I went and opened up all my old computers and I searched and searched and I couldn't find it. But I didn't look that hard, but I looked. And that changed. Oh, the killers, in Scream 3, there was more than 2 killers. There was
really? Okay.
I remember in the final scene, Sidney shoots I think it was the same thing. I think Gail Weathers got shot and I killed her for 5 minutes where she was lying there. You actually thought she was dead. And then of course she wasn't. And after Sidney kills the killer in the final scene, then she goes over to help Gail. And as she's helping Gail, there's all the dead bodies in the house and you just see them all rise up at once. And they had all killed because the killers had killed them and faked their deaths and they were all still alive.
Yeah.
And they were and so it was sort of a group, a bunch of teenage kids who had gotten together to play a game on Sidney for the various reasons. And so it was more than 2 killers. That was the big to do at the end. And it was a really great, powerful scene because you had 2 endings and it worked really well. But that was just in an outline form. And I think it was Bob who felt it was too violent. Too calm, because we were going through a really bad time with
Columbine
teenagers and Columbine and just teenage violence. And I think everyone was scared of that. I actually didn't see the movie. I was kind of
right.
I didn't see the movie for years. I only saw it when I sat down to write Scream 4. I said, I got to see Scream 3 because I'd seen like bits and pieces of it, but I never watched the whole movie.
Right.
And so I sat down and watched the whole movie from start to finish. And I don't remember that part, but I'll take your word for it.
May I ask, actually, and again, if you recall, may I ask what your reaction to Scream 3 was when you first saw it?
It didn't feel like Scream 1 and 2. It just didn't feel like it was. I thought, from a writing standpoint, I could tell it was from a different hand, Right. And I didn't find it scary. I thought it was a little funnier. I thought it was a little more kitschy, a little more campy. I thought it was. It had some really nice moments with the movie within a movie. I like Parker Posey's character and so forth, and that was a lot of fun. I thought it had some great moments to it. And I felt like one of the things that Wes and I did really well together was we tried to work the logic out. We really played the logic police with, well, this couldn't happen because this was happening. This couldn't happen here because that happened. And we played that game. We tried to make it as airtight as possible. And I found in Scream 3, it was a little messy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They got a fax, I think, that said, and they got the fax, but the power in their house already went off. And it's like little things like that where I was like, you know what, that's just sloppy. We can, it's like the little things like that just irk me because I'm like, I'm a writer. I'm like, that's something you could have fixed like that. There was an easy solution on the page to fix that. And the fact that you didn't fix it is lazy. Mm-hmm. And so that stuff like that would bug me, but also I was looking to be bugged. I was looking to be
That's fair.
I mean, to be fair, I wasn't watching. I wasn't just coming to it like a moviegoer. I was coming to someone who didn't write it, who should have. And I was looking at it going,
Yeah. Like it's someone else finishing your character stories.
Yeah. And, and I don't have any ill will towards anyone. It's just what happened at the time. And I'm just being honest. That's how I felt at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And I look back on it now. I'm much older and I've been through so much. And I look back on it now with more of a sense of humor, and I have so much more reflection. And I hope, the listeners understand that when they hear this. It's just that I am able to look back at it and just joke about it. I mean, and just comment on that was a disastrous time between me and the studio, and we didn't get along, and we had sort of a falling out. And the good news is Wes was so dear to me, and he was always sort of sticking up for me. And he was always, I felt like I really had a partner in him. And so that was, it was, clearly I had some disgruntlements with Bob.
Yeah.
We had a quite contentious relationship.
I think the last time we spoke, you had mentioned, okay, Scream 4, like the ending is very much what you wrote. It was always going to be Jill, blah, blah, blah. The ending was what you wrote, but there's other stuff in the middle that had changed. So again, it might be a memory question here, but like, was there something in draft 4 that you were like, oh, I wish that would have made it into the final film. I hate that we lost that part.
Right. The only thing I regret is I really love my original opening scene.
Ooh, what was it?
My opening scene was Sidney Prescott. And it was because I felt like I really wanted to meet her and know who she was all these years later. So we meet Sidney Prescott, we get to know her, and we get to catch up with her for 2 or 3 minutes before the phone starts and the calls start. And she has, and we set up her whole world, and she's in a house, and her relationships with her fiance and her assistant, because she's a writer now. And it was a bloodbath where these killers came in, and we watched how she was different now, and she was stronger, and she had technology behind her with her house locked down, and she was able to protect herself and do a really good job. And then she ultimately killed the killer in the opening scene, which was the big surprise, that he stabs her 5 times, and she finally keeps fighting back, and she came back. And there's a lot of twists and turns with this technology, with a camera video surveillance that I set up, and was always like using some sort of technology. And she ends up she gets stabbed 5 times, and she comes back and kills the killer at the end. That's the end of the first scene. Yeah. And then when we came into the title card, and after the title card, it said 2 years later. And then we started the movie. So we got to, and that kill tied into, and because there was someone else. Anyway, so that was and it was just, I thought, a really scary scene.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it before. And I've used it for spare parts and other stuff in the follow and so forth, and some of my other sort of surprises. And I'd have to go through the episodes and tell you where, right. But I've used it again. So I've got to use it. And I thought that was, I regret that, because it's one of the scariest scenes I've ever written.
It sounds really good.
Yeah.
I loved it. But the good news is it lived on. It did live in another way.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the joys of the following, is that you did repurpose a lot of things from Scream 3 and Scream 4 in there. But
yeah.
Okay.
But, and so that was anyway. But yes, that was probably the biggest loss. Like the Stabathon in the middle of the movie. I don't know where that came from. That was.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the characters I've always had a question about is the character of Robbie, because especially as queer viewers, we've never got an out and proud character in any of the 4 films. But then when Robbie gets killed, he says, I'm gay if that helps. And we've noticed that people interpret it in 2 different ways. Some people, like me, believe that he actually is gay. And then other people think that he's just saying that as like part of the new rules to not get killed. And we were wondering if you wrote Robbie one way or the other.
I didn't write Robbie.
No!
Kevin, you're breaking my heart here. Okay, well, that addresses that question, and now we can move on.
Yep.
I remember that coming up in a notes call. And I don't know who wrote that part. When Scream 4 came along, there were 8 writers for arbitration. So I don't recall. I couldn't tell you who wrote that line or who created that character. I think in my version, Robbie was gay, but I didn't create that line where he said, you can't kill me because I'm gay, if that helps, or whatever. I didn't write that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think, again, because there is a draft of something floating around, and I think someone had, because in the line they're like, oh, to survive this movie you pretty much have to be gay. But I think in one of the drafts that was floating around, it was like, oh, you can kill the gays now, it's progressive. And so I don't know if that was something that people saw?
I don't know. I don't know if I wrote that. I don't know. Maybe I wrote that. I don't know. I don't know where I'm guilty or where I'm not, but,
Well, so again, another contention with fans is the hospital ending of Scream 4, because some people really like it, and other people are like, it feels very tacked on. It feels like something they added after the fact. I know it was written before, but I didn't know if you had written that or if that was, again, after you went back to Vampire Diaries, if that was added after the fact.
It was, yes, I wrote a version of it. I don't know if I wrote the final version of it, but it was added after the fact. It was added before they filmed it, clearly,
right.
But it was tacked on. The studio felt like we didn't have enough of an ending. And so we took it to the hospital. And I think I don't know whose idea it was, if it was Wes or someone else's, but when they called me and said, we feel like we need a bigger ending, write whatever you want. I think someone suggested the hospital, so I ran with it. And I wrote a version of it. But again, I don't know if I was the finishing voice on
For
this.
sure.
But yeah, it was written prior to filming, but it was tacked on.
Yeah. So yes and yes.
Yes and yes.
Okay, thinking about the character of Jill specifically, obviously Emma Roberts does an amazing job as an actress, but a lot of people have latched on to her motivations as being very prescient, considering when the film was made and how much more relevant it has actually become in the years past. Like, I think it's one of the reasons people have rediscovered and come to appreciate Scream 4. And we're wondering, how did you come up with that motivation? Because it feels like it's really ahead of the curve.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I thought, I'm that guy who watches all those reality shows, and and I watch The Housewives, and I watch, I call it my Kardashian ending. Because it's sort of her motive is to be a celebrity. She wants to be a celebrity victim, and she wants to pull the mantle away from Sidney. But one of the things I also know is that you can't have just sort of a cerebral motive. You have to have something very personal. So connecting it to the idea that it's her aunt and that she's had to live in the shadow of this famous woman her entire life, and now she wants to play the part. To me, it's just very all about Eve, and mixed in with, that sort of the timeliness of the internet, social media exploding and reality television exploding onto the scene. And that was, and what I love about the new streams, they do a very timely motive too. And I think that's what's so great about keeping the franchise fresh, is that, we don't have a Michael Myers or a Freddy Krueger. We have a ghost mask, and someone different is in that ghost mask every single time. And so their motive is different every single time. And so we get to sort of keep it fresh and timely that way. And I think that's what they did such a beautiful job with this new version.
Well, and I do want to let you know, obviously the franchise has a very devoted queer following, period, but also a very devoted queer following. The ending, the Laurie Metcalf in 2 and Emma Roberts in 4, they have really broken the mold of it's like camp almost, but good.
Yeah, when I love the way Wes really got it. When I wrote in that she goes and slams herself against the wall and throws herself on the coffee table. I thought he nailed that. So
it's iconic. It's absolutely iconic. So one of my favorite characters is Kirby. And that's because I think a lot of people see her as a sort of gender flipped, updated version of Randy. And I guess I was just wondering, how did you, was that the specific intention of the character? Did you want her to play that new role? Did you think of how would Randy be updated in this way? And then factor that in? That's who Kirby was. I wanted her to be sort of the voice of Randy and be the person who could also have the inside knowledge of the genre and know all the conventions and tropes. And you needed someone, I felt like, who would sort of play that part and sort of be able to sort of speak to that and fill in all the references and have fun with. And I loved writing that character. I thought she was fun. I thought Hayden Panettiere was wonderful in the part. I'm such a big fan of hers. So.
She's definitely the fan favorite of the film. I think in the decade since its release.
I know. I feel like that's the thing. They're always like, "Well, is she alive or is she dead?"
It's because we want her to be alive.
No, and that's a good segue into my next question, because obviously you had a planned trilogy in mind. You had 4, 5, and 6. At least 5 and 6 kind of mapped out. We have read rumors, and again, they're all rumors because we don't know, but that 5 might have followed Jill going to college with Kirby. What would 6 have been?
Well, 5, I didn't have Kirby. In my version, she was dead. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. and Jill went to college, and then murder started on the college campus, and it was a killer who knew she was the killer from the last film. And so and the killer kept trying to expose her, so she would have to kill to keep it covered up. And so it was killer against killer. That was Scream 5, my version of it. And Scream 6, though, was going to go, and by the way, Sidney was a professor at that school, and that's why, and it was going to be a big love story between her, which was, the big thing between her and Billy in Scream 1 was, could she trust someone in love again? And that it was going to tell a love story. I was going to sort of like go down this path of I wanted Sidney to be happy. I feel like she's going through so much, and to just make her a sad victim was never part of my vision for that character. So I wanted to sort of give her some fulfillment and show what a true warrior she is, and she deserved happiness. And I was going to give her that, but I was creating a really bad red herring in the man that she was loving. And it turned out that he, in fact, was good, and she ended up with a happy ending. And that was my wish for her. And then Scream 6 was going to answer whatever happened between Dewey and Gail.
Wow.
Oh, okay. That's kind of cool.
That was going to be, Sidney was in it, but it was more focused on Gail and Gail's storyline and her and was she ever going to achieve her professional goals and become what she wanted to truly be and be taken serious as a journalist, and also sort of round herself out and be fulfilled as a with love.
I love that.
And it was all done in the media world. So it was all sort of that it was all around a news station, a TV show, cable TV show that she was doing. And so it got into it dealt with media, which also the motive of the killer was dealing with as well. It was just one of those things. But that was my idea for 6.
Yeah.
Going.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So obviously that's not what we're going to get when the new film opens up.
A lot better.
Okay.
So.
Well, we're very excited to check it out. Unfortunately, this is the end of our time, but thank you so much for all of your generous answers.
You just got me the dirt on people, and you don't ask me any good questions.
Well, no. What are your spoiler-free thoughts on the new film?
I love it. I thought I can honestly say I think they did a bang-up job. I think they're terrific. It's hard for me to separate because it's so part of my DNA, this whole franchise. And when they first sent it to me to watch the very first director's cut, I had an emotional response to it. I teared up. I got weepy. I found myself very emotionally involved. I found it funny. I just I of course knew what was going to happen. They let me be part of the development process, and they let me give notes and things like that. But more importantly, I got to be an audience member for the first time. And I was watching it with my boyfriend, and he was like cackling. He just laughing. And I was like, is this good? He went, oh, yeah. And I was like, okay. And I was like, because I didn't know. I just knew I was enjoying it. And I thought I was just watching it because I was so happy to see Sidney, and I was so happy to see Gail. And the new cast is really good too. They pop off the screen. And I loved Jenna Ortega is so good. It's like there's just some good acting in this movie, and there's a good cast, and they just did a beautiful job. And the Ready or Not guys, Radio Silence, they're just kind and passionate and gentle the way Wes was. And so I feel like they were just the right people to do it. Mm-hmm. So it all kind of worked out. I was happy.
That's good to hear, especially after Scream 3.
You know what? I mean, we're telling this story. We talk about Scream 3 and Scream 4 as if it was, a war zone, and it really wasn't. It was just sort of one moment after another, and it just a lot of it got blown out of proportion. It really comes down to, when you're part of a family for too long, eventually you're just going to argue and fight. And I'm a good boy, and I really do what I'm asked to do. But at some point, I gotta put my foot down when I think we're really turning left when we should be going right.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, thank you for your candor. We really appreciate it.
I hope everyone else appreciates it.
No, again, like we've had people reach out to us asking us these kind of questions, and we're like, we don't know, but maybe Kevin Williamson will.
Well, and I don't know everything, and a lot of it. And like I said, I'm a very unreliable narrator because I don't remember everything. I would say fact check me, but
it's been 25 years since the first one. It's understandable.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Kevin. This has been fantastic.
Please make me sound good.
We will.
You will be fine. I promise.
All right.
I promise.
Awesome.
All right. Thanks
lovely
again.
to talk to you. It's good to see you guys again.
Atlas Avenue, a long stretch of road that encompasses everything the city of Kennett Heights has to offer. Neon lights, traffic, crime, the hustle and bustle of everyday life, and the craziest of characters. My office was above it all. My name is James Locke, and I'm a PI.
Hello, Mr. J. How the hell you doing today?
Good, Edith. Nearly every year I have a new case. New people to meet, new clues to discover, and new problems to solve. But I do it the old-fashioned way. No technology. Nothing post-1950. Hell, I don't even listen to podcasts, but you should. Atlas Avenue Beat is a spoof of the film noir genre with goofy characters, tons of wordplay, and non-stop raunchy humor. There's also 3 whole seasons out right now with more on the way. Just search for Atlas Avenue Beat wherever you listen to podcasts or visit us online at bloody.fm.
Hello, I'm Shelby Scott, the host of Scare You to Sleep, a podcast where I tell you spooky bedtime stories full of creepy sound effects and music that is soothing yet unsettling to help immerse you into a world of horror. This is a show for those of us who have realized horror can be a strange but relaxing escape from reality. Speaking of escapes, sometimes I lead you through guided nightmares, like a guided meditation, but instead of flowery meadows, I take you on a journey through your own personal nightmare. So come get lost in the terror with me. Listen to Scare You to Sleep wherever you listen to podcasts, or find us online at bloody.fm. Sweet screams.